Room, folks, that's all we ask. Thank you.
Ryan, what do you think about what happened today? You satisfied?